Hey, this is Shane, and welcome to my Curator of the Lost podcast. This is my first episode, and it's entitled The Smell of Success. When traveling, I enjoy visiting new and random book, junk, or thrift stores. Small bookstores or thrifts are often tucked away in interesting neighborhoods and always get you out in a city to see something new or see someone different. They always have the promise of a good treasure hunt, and the chance for an unexpected adventure is high. You never know what you'll find or who you might meet at a good book or thrift store. When I go into such an establishment for the first time, I go in slow and deliberate. I do this for two reasons. One is to check things out and get my bearings, decide where to go first, and to get a general impression of the establishment. If someone's working up front, I may want to say hello or get directions to a section of the store. However, a slow entry is also rooted in something deeper from the primal part of my brain, the hindbrain, the medulla. It's a survival instinct. Just like our big orange tabby cat we had years ago, his name was Trouble. We would let him outside, and he didn't just run out willy-nilly. He would ease out of the door an inch at a time, taking stock of the situation, looking for predators, making sure the coast was clear. This was instinct born out of DNA and thousands, if not millions of years of evolution. I think this is a good practice. I adopt this strategy when entering a new book or thrift store. I do a slow entry with an instinctive survey of my surroundings. I scan the store, take it all in, see how neat or messy it is, look closely for predators, all the important stuff first. A new bookstore may look new or old, and sparse or full. It could be organized, or my personal favorite is when it has books stacked from floor to ceiling on top of shelves, on the floor, in the corners. Every conceivable surface and dimension are covered with a stack of books. Shelves in that situation form a passageway that would even make a dungeon master proud. These are the best. I know I'm in for an adventure when entering a bookstore like this. And thrift stores are similar. If I enter and things are organized and all the clothes are separated by color, then the chances of finding a real treasure are slim. I might find a diamond in the rough, but a thrift store that is too perfect is usually a dry well, or prices are likely going to be much higher than I'm willing to pay, even if I do find something of interest. While these initial visual assessments are valuable and they contribute to my first impression, I'll say the look of a place is often not my first impression. My first impression is often reserved for my sense of smell. Smell hits as soon as the door opens. Pleasant or not, smell is often first. I had this experience on a day trip right outside of town. I went into a small thrift store and hadn't been there in a while. Went there before and had a pleasant experience. But as I walked through the door on this particular occasion, my nose was hit with an immediate and overwhelming smell of cat pee. It was strong and abrupt, and unfortunately my legs and body couldn't react as fast as my nose. I was 3 steps in. The door was closing behind me, and my body just couldn't react fast enough. The door banged shut, and cats scattered everywhere. There's a lady behind the counter, and she's startled, suddenly awake and seeing a customer, and she exclaims, "Come on in and look around. We just opened back up. I've been sick for about 6 weeks, but the cats have been taking care of things." Man, I made a short loop around the first end cap. I feigned interest as I headed back to the exit, and as I reached the door to freedom, the cat lady stood up and she said something to me, and I paused. Thoughts of the Kathy Bates character in Stephen King's book, Misery, flashed in my mind. And she says, "I just made some fresh-baked cookies," offering a tray of cookies to me. "Would you like one?" I politely declined and continued out the door. And I'll tell you, fresh air never smelled sweeter. Well, bookstores can also have distinctive smells. An old book smell can be a good smell. It can even be comforting. But at some point, it becomes oppressive and stale. I've experienced this in many bookstore basements where the air is still and absent from circulation for decades at a time. The old book smell at that point becomes overpowering and unpleasant. It even brings on a sense of decay. But smell can also be helpful when you purchase something, especially a book, an old book that maybe be discolored. What you do is you always smell it first. Don't just blindly slap your money up on the table. Put it up to your nose. Have a tentative sniff at a safe distance, followed by a thorough and methodical full nose inhale. If something can pass the sniff test, then buy it. This really helps to avoid smoke-infused finds. An item from a smoker's house will retain a faint smoke smell for years, if not indefinitely. I've found and passed on many great books because of a greasy nicotine film that's on the cover, but it's preceded by distinctive smoky smell that emanates from the pages. The one exception to this was a Rankin first edition of The Hobbit from 1977 that I found at a California Goodwill for $1.99. It reeked of smoke, but I decided to purchase it anyway. And using the best suggestions from the internet, I wiped it down with dryer sheets and put it in a paper bag with baking soda. And it was improved, but it still reeked of smoke despite of my best efforts. You can't fool the nose. So I sold it a few weeks later, smell fully disclosed. But maybe the purchaser was a smoker, and he didn't care. But sometimes smells can come from unexpected places. On one trip, I bought a large assortment of vintage crayons. 20 or so boxes from the 60s and 70s that were unopened and unused with pristine, waxy tips. There were 8 packs and 12 packs and 24 packs, and even an original 64 pack that had the sharpener built into the case. All of these were pre-UPC packages. They were very cool. And I say see cool, buy cool. But one of the jumbo-sized packs, there was an 8-pack, it was even octagonal in shape instead of round. But all of these, I didn't understand how powerful the smell of crayons can be. I purchased these crayons, and they were in a box safe in the back seat of my rental car for 3 days as I traveled. But every time I opened the car door, everything smelled like crayons. And even when I turned the car into the rental agency, I had to explain the smell to the attendant. I showed him the stash of crayons and assured him it would go away in a few hours. I ended up selling these crayons to a lady in Indiana. She wrote me a note and explained that as a child, she never used her crayons. She hated to mess them up. So now she buys vintage crayons in pristine shape, and she just opens up the box to look at them. All the colors, so pretty. Hey, don't judge. We all do weird stuff. But the smell can happen later as well. Regardless of your best practices and intentions on buying, sometimes something doesn't smell when you buy it, but can develop an unexpected smell later. This happened to me as on one thrift store expedition, I ran across an unusual and vintage fur coat. I'm not sure what kind of fur it was, but it was very interesting and retro cool. So I bought it, and I brought it home for presentation to my wife. And to my surprise, she was not interested in the fur at least. So I hung it in the closet and forgot about it. Almost a year later, I see this fur coat and I decide to pull it out and decide what to do with it. I leave it hanging on the closet doorknob so I'll not forget it again, pondering my options, doing my research. And a bit later, I come into the room. There's the fur hanging on the doorknob, but I notice there's something wet on the fur. It's dripping moisture, and there's a puddle dripping onto the floor. And upon further inspection, it's to my alarm and my disgust, I find that the wetness is actually cat pee. Trouble. Our dominant orange tabby cat had strolled through the house, and he came upon this fur. an obvious trespasser to his domicile. And as any good cat would do, he took it upon himself to mark his territory and ward off this invader. So, in the middle of my eBay book room with a fur coat hanging on the door, he marked his territory and sprayed all over the fur coat. And as I head outside to the trash can and my ruined fur in hand, I'm half laughing, half cursing. Trouble, my orange cat, he struts in front of me, proud and confident in vanquishing his foe, swishing his tail, and appreciating the smell of success.